$20 million in potential funding evaporated before my eyes as investors rushed toward the exit doors. The presentation screen displayed a catastrophic error message in bright red letters. Trevor Whitman, the CEO's son, stood frozen beside the laptop where he had just clicked the wrong button. His face drained of all color as he stared at the black screen. The conference room fell silent except for the sound of leather briefcases snapping shut and chair legs scraping against polished floors. Our company's future hung in the balance while Trevor's hands trembled over the keyboard. The CTO slowly turned toward me, his eyes wide with dawning horror and realization. "What did you do?" he whispered. I maintained my calm smile, knowing this moment was 3 months in the making. "My name is Cherie, and 6 months earlier, I thought I had landed the opportunity of a lifetime. At 28 years old, I had been recruited as Senior Database Architect for Data Flow Solutions, a promising fintech startup housed in a sleek glass building in downtown Seattle. The Pacific Northwest rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows as I walked through those doors for the first time, carrying my laptop bag and dreams of building something revolutionary. My background made me perfect for the role. Computer science degree from University of Washington, followed by 5 intense years at Amazon Web Services where I specialized in high-performance database systems. I had worked on projects that handled millions of transactions per second, optimizing everything from query speeds to storage efficiency. When Dataflow's headhunters reached out, they painted a picture of unlimited potential. "We need someone who can architect the backbone of the future," the recruiter had said during our initial phone conversation. "This isn't just another database job. You'll be building the foundation for a payment processing platform that could revolutionize how small businesses handle transactions." The office space impressed me immediately. Exposed brick walls, standing desks, multiple monitors glowing with code, and a coffee bar that rivaled any specialty shop. The company had 15 engineers, all brilliant minds recruited from major tech companies. The energy felt electric, collaborative, innovative. Richard Whitman, the CEO and founder, embodied everything I expected from a successful entrepreneur. Tall, confident, silver-haired, with the kind of passionate intensity that made investors write checks. During our interview, he spoke eloquently about disrupting the financial technology sector. Traditional payment processors charge exorbitant fees because they rely on outdated infrastructure, Richard explained, leaning forward across the mahogany conference table. "We're building something faster, cheaper, and more secure. Your database architecture will be the heart of that revolution." The technical challenges excited me. They needed scalable database clustering to handle exponential growth, real-time analytics for fraud detection, and bulletproof security protocols. The salary offered exceeded my Amazon compensation by 30%, plus equity that could prove incredibly valuable if the company succeeded. "You'll have complete autonomy over the technical architecture," Richard assured me. "We hire the best people and let them do what they do best." Everything seemed perfect until I met Trevor Whitman. Richard's 26-year-old son had recently graduated from business school and carried the ambiguous title of Head of Strategic Development. During our brief introduction, Trevor questioned several of my technical decisions with the kind of confidence that comes from partial knowledge. "Have you considered how your clustering approach might impact our strategic scalability metrics?" Trevor asked, using buzzwords that sounded impressive but revealed a shallow understanding of actual database architecture. "Strategic scalability isn't really a technical term," I replied politely. "But if you're asking about horizontal versus vertical scaling strategies, I can explain my approach." Trevor's smile tightened. "I think you'll find that strategic thinking requires understanding business implications beyond pure technical implementation." The other employees exchanged subtle glances when Trevor spoke, their expressions carefully neutral in that particular way that suggested underlying tensions. I filed away the observation but remained optimistic about my new position. My first month exceeded every expectation. I designed an innovative database clustering solution that improved transaction processing speeds by 40% while reducing server costs. The engineering team embraced my ideas enthusiastically, building on my foundation with creative optimizations. James Patterson, the Chief Technology Officer, praised my work publicly during company meetings. Sherry's clustering architecture represents exactly the kind of innovation that will set us apart from established competitors, he announced during one weekly gathering. The technical challenges energized me daily. I solved complex performance bottlenecks, implemented sophisticated caching mechanisms, and designed security protocols that exceeded industry standards. My database optimization strategies reduced query response times from seconds to milliseconds. During team lunches at local restaurants, other engineers shared their appreciation for my collaborative approach. "You explain complex concepts without making anyone feel stupid," said Sarah, our senior front-end developer. "It's refreshing to work with someone who values teaching as much as building." I felt valued, respected, and intellectually stimulated. The equity package meant that company success would directly benefit my financial future. For the first time in my career, I truly believed I was building something meaningful that could impact thousands of businesses. Then came the first warning sign that shattered my sense of security. During a leadership team meeting in the main conference room, Trevor presented what he called his strategic optimization initiative to the entire executive group. As he clicked through PowerPoint slides, I realized with growing horror that he was describing my database clustering solution as his own conceptual innovation. This strategic framework leverages distributed processing architectures to maximize throughput efficiency, Trevor explained confidently to the assembled vice presidents and directors. By implementing these conceptual protocols, we can achieve unprecedented scalability metrics. He was using my technical specifications, my performance benchmarks, my architectural diagrams. Every detail came directly from documents I had created, emails I had sent, and presentations I had delivered to the engineering team. When Trevor finished his presentation, Richard beamed with paternal pride. "Excellent strategic thinking, son. This kind of visionary leadership is exactly what we need as we scale the business." I raised my hand tentatively. "I'd like to clarify some of the technical implementation details that Trevor mentioned." Trevor smoothly interrupted before I could continue. "Cherie did excellent work implementing my conceptual framework. Her technical execution of these strategic principles has been very satisfactory." The room fell completely silent. Richard nodded approvingly at his son, while the other executives scribbled notes about Trevor's strategic vision. I sat there stunned, realizing that my 3 weeks of intensive technical innovation had just been reframed as simple implementation of Trevor's business strategy. After the meeting, I approached James Patterson privately in his office. "There seems to be some confusion about the database clustering project. Those technical specifications originated from my architectural research, not from any strategic framework." James shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding direct eye contact. "Trevor does bring valuable business perspective to technical initiatives. Sometimes the line between strategy and implementation can get blurred, but those were my technical innovations," I insisted. "I designed every aspect of that clustering approach." "I understand your concern," James replied carefully. "But Trevor is Richard's son, and he does have legitimate input on business strategy. Maybe focus on continuing the excellent technical work rather than worrying about credit attribution." I left his office with a cold feeling in my stomach, realizing that I had walked into a family business where merit mattered less than bloodlines. The dream job was beginning to reveal its nightmare underneath. Over the following weeks, Trevor's interference became systematic and increasingly aggressive. What I initially dismissed as isolated incidents revealed themselves as part of a calculated campaign to steal credit for my technical innovations. Trevor began scheduling weekly strategy sessions where he would probe me for detailed technical information about ongoing projects. These meetings took place in his corner office, which featured motivational posters about leadership and a bookshelf filled with business strategy volumes that appeared untouched. "Walk me through your approach to optimizing query performance," Trevor would say, leaning back in his expensive leather chair while taking extensive notes on a yellow legal pad. "I need to understand the strategic implications for our scalability roadmap." Initially, I interpreted these sessions as genuine interest in understanding the technical foundation of our platform. I explained database indexing strategies, caching mechanisms, and load balancing algorithms in detail, believing that collaborative communication between business and technical teams would benefit everyone. Trevor's questions became increasingly specific and probing. How exactly do you determine optimal shard distribution? He would ask. What metrics do you use to measure clustering efficiency? Can you show me the configuration files for your load balancing setup? I provided thorough answers, even creating detailed documentation to help Trevor understand complex technical concepts. I spent hours simplifying database architecture into business-friendly language. Assuming his interest reflected genuine desire to bridge the gap between strategy and implementation, the first sign of Trevor's true intentions emerged during the next engineering team meeting. As I began explaining my revolutionary data compression algorithm, Trevor interrupted confidently. Actually, this compression initiative flows directly from the efficiency optimization strategy I outlined last month, he announced to the assembled developers. Cherie has done solid work implementing these strategic protocols. I stared at him in disbelief. The data compression algorithm represented months of research and experimentation. I had analyzed dozens of compression techniques, tested various implementations, and finally developed a hybrid approach that reduced storage requirements by 60% while maintaining lightning-fast query speeds. Trevor, that's not accurate, I said firmly. This compression algorithm is entirely my technical innovation. You haven't been involved in its development. Trevor's expression remained calm and condescending. I think you may not fully appreciate how strategic thinking guides technical implementation. My efficiency framework provides the conceptual foundation that makes your coding work possible. The other engineers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I could see confusion in their faces as they tried to reconcile Trevor's claims with their direct experience of my independent technical work. This pattern repeated itself with every major project I completed. My security protocol improvements became Trevor's risk management framework. My innovative backup and recovery system became Trevor's business continuity strategy. Each time, Trevor provided just enough technical vocabulary to sound credible, while fundamentally misrepresenting the source of actual innovation. The workplace dynamics began shifting in disturbing ways. Senior engineers started directing technical questions to Trevor instead of consulting me directly. During code reviews and architecture discussions, colleagues would reference Trevor's strategic vision rather than acknowledging my technical leadership. I attempted to clarify the truth during team meetings, but Trevor had perfected the art of diplomatic deflection. Whenever I tried to establish proper credit attribution, he would smile and say things like, "Cherie is being modest about her implementation skills," or "It's important that everyone on the team feels valued for their contributions." The psychological manipulation was sophisticated and effective. Trevor never directly lied about creating my technical work, but he consistently framed every innovation as implementation of his broader strategic concepts. This allowed him to maintain plausible deniability while systematically stealing credit for my intellectual property. My performance reviews began reflecting this distorted narrative. Instead of recognition for technical innovation and architectural leadership, I received praise for excellent execution of strategic initiatives and strong implementation skills. The language subtly repositioned me as a skilled technician rather than a technical leader. The financial implications became apparent when promotion cycles arrived. An opportunity for senior architect position went to another engineer who supposedly demonstrated more strategic thinking capability. My equity package got downgraded due to what Richard called limited leadership potential beyond technical implementation. I felt trapped in a nightmare where my professional accomplishments were being systematically rewritten. The brilliant technical innovations that should have established my reputation instead elevated Trevor's perceived strategic expertise. During lunch conversations with colleagues, I began hearing disturbing comments that revealed how effectively Trevor's manipulation had poisoned perceptions of my contributions. Trevor really has amazing vision for how technology can solve business problems, Sarah mentioned while we ate at a nearby sandwich shop. It's impressive how he can conceptualize these complex technical solutions. Those aren't his technical solutions, I replied carefully. I designed those database optimizations and security protocols. Sarah looked genuinely confused. But Trevor always explains how your coding fits into his strategic frameworks. I assumed you were implementing his technology roadmaps. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My colleagues genuinely believed that Trevor was the technical visionary, and I was simply his skilled implementer. Month by month, my professional identity was being erased and replaced with a completely false narrative. I began documenting everything, meticulously. Every email conversation, every technical specification, every line of code got carefully time-stamped and archived. I printed hard copies of patent applications I had filed for our core database innovations. I maintained detailed logs of meetings where I had presented original technical concepts. The documentation process revealed the shocking scope of Trevor's intellectual property theft. He had been harvesting my innovations for months, building a comprehensive portfolio of strategic insights that consisted entirely of my technical work, repackaged with business terminology. During an accidental conversation I overheard between Trevor and Richard, the full extent of his agenda became clear. They were discussing preparations for upcoming investor presentations, and Trevor was positioning himself as the company's primary technical visionary. These database innovations represent my strategic thinking at its best, Trevor told his father confidently. I've developed a comprehensive technology roadmap that will impress any venture capital firm. The platform architecture demonstrates exactly the kind of strategic leadership they want to see in executive management. Richard responded with obvious paternal pride. Your technical expertise, combined with business acumen, makes you the perfect candidate to eventually lead this company. These innovations prove you understand both strategy and implementation. I realized that Trevor intended to take complete credit for the entire database platform during investor presentations. My life's work, my technical expertise, my months of intensive innovation were being packaged as evidence of Trevor's qualification to inherit leadership of the company. The injustice felt overwhelming. But I also recognized an opportunity. Trevor's fundamental misunderstanding of the technical concepts he was stealing created a vulnerability that I could potentially exploit. His arrogance and complete lack of genuine technical knowledge might provide the perfect foundation for calculated revenge. Everything changed when Dataflow Solutions received a call that would determine our company's survival. Pinnacle Ventures, one of the most prestigious venture capital firms on the West Coast, had expressed serious interest in leading a Series A funding round. The potential investment amount made my head spin. $20 million. Richard called an emergency all-hands meeting in our largest conference room. The excitement was palpable as employees filled every chair and lined the walls. I had never seen Richard look so energized and focused. This opportunity represents everything we've worked toward, Richard announced, his voice carrying across the silent room. Pinnacle Ventures has funded companies that went on to become billion-dollar enterprises. Their interest in Dataflow validates every assumption we've made about disrupting the payment processing industry. The timeline was aggressive. 6 weeks to prepare a comprehensive presentation that would showcase our technology platform, business model, market opportunity, and executive leadership capabilities. Everything would depend on convincing Pinnacle's managing partners that Dataflow deserved their investment and strategic partnership. Trevor will lead the technical portion of our presentation, Richard continued, and my heart sank into my stomach. His strategic vision for our platform architecture will demonstrate the kind of innovative thinking that venture capital firms seek in portfolio companies. I felt the blood drain from my face as the implications became clear. Trevor would be presenting my technical innovations to industry experts as evidence of his own strategic genius. The database platform I had architected, the security protocols I had designed, the performance optimizations I had developed, would all be attributed to Trevor's visionary leadership. After the meeting, Richard pulled Trevor and me aside for a private conversation in his executive office. The space reflected his personality: floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, modern furniture, and walls lined with awards from industry publications. "Cherie, I need you to provide comprehensive technical support for Trevor's presentation," Richard explained. Your implementation expertise will be crucial for helping him prepare detailed explanations of our platform capabilities. The word implementation stung like a slap across my face. My role was being publicly defined as technical support for Trevor's presentation of my own intellectual property. I think there might be some confusion about the origins of our platform innovations. I began, carefully. The database architecture, security protocols, and performance optimizations were developed through my independent technical research, not as implementation of existing strategic frameworks. Richard's expression hardened slightly. Trevor brings valuable strategic perspective that elevates pure technical work into comprehensive business solutions. The investor presentation needs to demonstrate strategic thinking, not just coding capabilities. Trevor smiled with false humility. Dad, Cherie has done excellent technical work, but investors want to see strategic vision and leadership potential. They're not just funding technology. They're investing in executive talent who can scale innovative solutions into market-leading businesses. I realized that arguing further would only damage my position. Richard had already decided that Trevor would represent the company's technical expertise to potential investors. My choice was either to support this charade or risk being marginalized completely. Of course, I replied with forced professionalism. I'll provide whatever technical documentation Trevor needs for his presentation. Over the following weeks, my life became a nightmare of endless preparation for Trevor's moment in the spotlight. He demanded that I create detailed technical specifications, explaining every aspect of our platform in language simple enough for his understanding. Break down the database clustering approach step by step, Trevor instructed during one of our daily preparation sessions. I need to be able to explain the strategic rationale behind each technical decision. I spent 14-hour days creating comprehensive documentation that translated my complex architectural innovations into business-friendly explanations. Trevor insisted on multiple revisions, claiming that investor presentations required strategic framing rather than technical details. The personal cost mounted rapidly. I missed my grandmother's 80th birthday celebration because Trevor scheduled an emergency preparation session. I had to cancel plans to attend my sister's college graduation because Trevor needed additional technical briefings. My relationship with my boyfriend deteriorated as constant work demands consumed my evenings and weekends. The physical toll became visible in my mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, weight loss from stress-induced loss of appetite, and chronic headaches from endless hours staring at computer screens. My health was crumbling under the pressure of supporting Trevor's fraudulent presentation. During team lunches, I listened to colleagues discussing the upcoming investor demo with excitement and anticipation. They genuinely believed that Trevor's technical presentation would showcase the innovations that made Dataflow special. I can't wait to see how Trevor explains our clustering architecture to venture capital experts, said Mike, our senior back-end developer. His strategic understanding of how all these technical pieces fit together is really impressive. Trevor's presentation should demonstrate why we're different from every other payment processing startup, added Lisa, our DevOps engineer. The way he conceptualizes our technical competitive advantages shows real leadership potential. The irony was suffocating. My colleagues were excited to see Trevor present my technical work as evidence of his strategic brilliance. They had been so thoroughly manipulated that they genuinely believed Trevor deserved credit for innovations that represented months of my independent research. The ultimate humiliation came when I discovered Trevor's presentation slides. Instead of acknowledging my role in developing our platform, the slides positioned him as the chief technical strategist who had architected Dataflow's innovative solutions. My name appeared only in small font, as implementation support. As I reviewed Trevor's materials, a shocking realization crystallized. He fundamentally misunderstood the technical concepts he was planning to present. His explanations contained basic errors that revealed complete ignorance of database architecture principles. One slide claimed that our distributed clustering methodology leverages strategic optimization algorithms to maximize throughput scalability. This was complete nonsense that combined technical buzzwords without any actual meaning. Trevor clearly had no idea how database clustering actually worked. Another slide described our security protocols as implementing strategic encryption frameworks that optimize protective redundancy through scalable authentication matrices. Again, this represented meaningless business speak that demonstrated zero understanding of actual security architecture. I realized that Trevor's technical incompetence, combined with his arrogance, created a perfect opportunity. If he attempted to explain complex database concepts to venture capital experts, his ignorance would become immediately apparent. The question was whether I had the courage to allow his fraud to expose itself publicly. The investor demo was scheduled for the following week. I had to decide whether to protect Trevor from his own incompetence or allow him to face the consequences of stealing credit for work he didn't understand. The choice would determine not only my professional future but the fate of 14 other employees whose livelihoods depended on securing this investment. I spent the weekend before the investor demo formulating the most carefully calculated plan of my career. Everything depended on precise timing, technical preparation, and leveraging Trevor's predictable arrogance against his own interests. The plan required creating 2 versions of our database demonstration system. The primary version would function normally, showcasing the genuine innovations I had developed. The secondary version would contain carefully hidden vulnerabilities that would only activate under specific conditions that I could control. Working through Saturday and Sunday in the empty office, I implemented a sophisticated switching mechanism that responded to particular command sequences. The system would appear completely normal during standard demonstrations, but specific administrative actions would trigger a spectacular failure mode designed to expose technical incompetence. The technical implementation required extraordinary precision. I created legitimate backup systems to protect our actual company data while building parallel demonstration databases that could safely fail without damaging real information. Every line of code was documented with timestamped comments proving my authorship. I consulted with an intellectual property attorney on Friday afternoon, ostensibly for general legal advice about patent protections. Hypothetically, I asked, if someone were presenting technical innovations they didn't develop, what kind of documentation would establish actual ownership? Comprehensive records, the attorney explained. Code repositories with commit histories, email communications showing development process, patent applications with filing dates, and any other evidence demonstrating independent creation timeline. I had been maintaining exactly those records for months. My digital paper trail proved beyond question that every technical innovation Trevor planned to present originated from my independent research and development work. The psychological component required understanding Trevor's behavioral patterns with scientific precision. I studied his need to dominate technical discussions, his compulsive tendency to override safety protocols when trying to impress authority figures, and his complete lack of genuine understanding about database architecture. During our preparation sessions, I began feeding Trevor deliberately incomplete technical information, while allowing him to discover obvious solutions that made him feel intellectually superior. His confidence grew as he convinced himself that he truly understood our platform's complexities. I think you're overcomplicating the technical explanations, Trevor told me during one session. Investors want to see strategic confidence, not excessive technical detail. I'll focus on demonstrating leadership rather than getting lost in implementation specifics. Perfect. Trevor's plan to avoid detailed technical discussion would work beautifully with my strategy. His surface-level understanding would become glaringly obvious when investors asked sophisticated questions that required genuine expertise. I also began building strategic alliances with key company stakeholders. During casual conversations, I shared subtle observations with James Patterson about discrepancies between Trevor's claims and actual technical realities. Have you noticed any inconsistencies in how Trevor describes our clustering architecture? I asked James while we grabbed coffee from our office kitchen. James shifted uncomfortably. I've wondered about some of his technical explanations. They don't always align with the detailed specifications you've provided. Just something to keep in mind, I replied casually. Investor presentations require absolute technical accuracy. I maintained carefully professional relationships with board members while creating comprehensive documentation trails through strategic email communications. Every technical decision, every innovation timeline, and every development process was recorded with timestamps and detailed explanations. The ethical dimension of my plan caused sleepless nights and serious soul-searching. I genuinely cared about data flow solutions and the 14 employees whose jobs depended on securing investment funding. My strategy would expose Trevor's fraud, but it might also damage the company's chances of obtaining crucial financing. After extensive reflection, I concluded that allowing Trevor to present stolen intellectual property to industry experts posed greater long-term risks than exposing the truth. If investors discovered his fraud later, the reputational damage could destroy the company completely. My plan would reveal the truth while demonstrating that Dataflow possessed genuine technical innovation worthy of investment. The final component involved researching Pinnacle Ventures' investment team. I discovered that their managing partner, David Chen, had personally invented several advanced database optimization techniques that were now industry standards. Trevor's planned presentation would not only expose his incompetence but potentially insult one of the field's most respected experts. During the week before the demo, I made final preparations by configuring demonstration systems that would respond specifically to Trevor's anticipated commands. The setup required him to choose between safe demonstration modes and full production access, knowing that his ego would compel him to select the more impressive but dangerous option. I created multiple contingency strategies for different investor scenarios while preparing emergency protocols to minimize actual system damage. The goal was maximizing Trevor's exposure while protecting legitimate company interests. 3 days before the presentation, I learned that Pinnacle Ventures would bring 6 representatives, 3 managing partners, 2 technical specialists, and 1 operations expert. This audience would immediately recognize technical incompetence and appreciate genuine innovation. Trevor's confidence reached peak levels as he rehearsed his presentation in the main conference room. This demonstration will show investors exactly the kind of strategic technical leadership they want to see in senior management, he told Richard proudly. I'm confident you'll represent our innovations brilliantly, Richard replied with obvious paternal pride. I watched from the back of the room, knowing that Trevor's supreme confidence would prove to be his downfall. His fundamental misunderstanding of the technology he was claiming to have developed would become undeniably apparent to industry experts. The night before the demo, I performed final system checks and reviewed my comprehensive documentation one last time. Patent applications, code repositories, email trails, and development timelines all confirmed my ownership of every innovation Trevor planned to present as his strategic vision. I also prepared mentally for the emotional and professional aftermath. Exposing Trevor's fraud would certainly create chaos and potentially damage my relationship with Richard. But I had reached the point where protecting my integrity and intellectual property mattered more than maintaining false workplace harmony. As I left the office that evening, I felt a strange combination of nervousness and anticipation. 6 months of systematic theft and humiliation would finally face a moment of reckoning. Trevor's arrogance and ignorance had created the perfect opportunity for calculated justice. The investor demo would determine whether truth and merit could triumph over nepotism and fraud. Everything I had worked for, professionally and personally, would be decided in the next 24 hours. Tuesday morning arrived with typical Seattle drizzle, but the atmosphere inside Dataflow's conference room crackled with nervous energy. I arrived early to perform final system checks while other employees arranged chairs and tested audio-visual equipment. Pinnacle Ventures team arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, and their presence immediately elevated the room's professional intensity. David Chen, the managing partner, possessed exactly the kind of quiet confidence that comes from decades of technical and business expertise. His 2 colleagues, Sarah Williams and Michael Rodriguez, carried themselves with similar authority. The technical specialists, Dr. Jennifer Liu and Dr. Robert Thompson, were both accomplished researchers whose academic publications I had studied during my graduate work. Their presence meant that any technical discussion would be evaluated by genuine experts who understood database architecture at the deepest levels. Richard opened with polished remarks about Dataflow's mission and market opportunity. His presentation skills were genuinely impressive as he outlined the problems with existing payment processing infrastructure and described our potential solutions. Traditional payment processors rely on decades-old technology that creates artificial bottlenecks and excessive fees, Richard explained confidently. Dataflow's platform represents a fundamental reimagining of how financial transactions should be processed in the digital economy. The investors listened attentively as Richard covered market sizing, competitive analysis, and revenue projections. His business case was compelling, and I could see genuine interest in the investors' expressions and note-taking behavior. Then came the moment I had been anticipating with equal parts dread and excitement. Richard smiled proudly as he introduced Trevor to present the technical foundation of our competitive advantage. Trevor has architected the innovative platform that makes our business model possible, Richard announced. His strategic vision for database optimization, security protocols, and scalable architecture demonstrates the kind of technical leadership that transforms entire industries. Trevor approached the presentation screen with supreme confidence. He had rehearsed his opening remarks extensively, and his delivery was smooth and professional. Dataflow's technology platform leverages cutting-edge distributed architecture to achieve unprecedented performance metrics, he began. For the first 15 minutes, Trevor successfully navigated the business-oriented portions of his presentation. He discussed market opportunities, competitive positioning, and strategic advantages, using language that sounded impressive to general business audiences. The trouble began when Dr. Liu asked the first detailed technical question. Can you explain the specific algorithms you use for database sharding across distributed clusters? Trevor's smile faltered slightly. Our sharding methodology leverages strategic optimization frameworks that maximize distribution efficiency through scalable algorithmic protocols. Dr. Liu's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the subtle glance she exchanged with Dr. Thompson. Trevor's response was complete nonsense that revealed immediate ignorance of basic database concepts. Could you be more specific about the actual partitioning logic? Dr. Thompson followed up. How do you handle cross-shard queries and maintain consistency guarantees? The partitioning strategies implement comprehensive consistency management through strategic optimization of cross-cluster communication protocols. Trevor replied, doubling down on meaningless technical buzzwords. I watched the investors' faces transform from polite interest to growing confusion and concern. These were experts who immediately recognized that Trevor was speaking nonsense while pretending to possess technical expertise. David Chen leaned forward slightly. Perhaps we could see a live demonstration of the platform's capabilities. Trevor's confidence returned as he moved toward the laptop connected to our projection system. This was exactly the moment I had been preparing for during weeks of careful planning. Absolutely, Trevor replied enthusiastically. It'll demonstrate the real-time performance capabilities that make our platform superior to anything else in the market. The demonstration system presented two clear options on the opening screen: safe demo mode for controlled presentations, and full production access for comprehensive system testing. I had designed this choice specifically to exploit Trevor's ego and need to impress investors. Trevor, I interjected quietly from my position near the back wall. You might want to use demo mode for safety during the investor presentation. Trevor turned toward me with visible irritation. I think I can handle presenting my own technical innovations, Cherie. Investors want to see real capabilities, not simplified demonstrations. He clicked full production access while the entire room watched. Perfect. Trevor's predictable arrogance had led him directly into the trap I had spent weeks preparing. The system loaded our actual database interface, displaying real transaction data and administrative controls. Trevor began explaining the strategic architecture while attempting to execute queries that would showcase platform performance. This query optimization demonstrates the strategic efficiency of our clustering algorithms, Trevor announced as he typed commands into the database console, but his fundamental misunderstanding of database syntax immediately became apparent. Instead of writing a simple select statement to display transaction volumes, Trevor attempted to execute commands that mixed different database languages while using completely incorrect logical operators. Dr. Liu and Dr. Thompson exchanged increasingly concerned glances as Trevor's queries produced syntax errors and system warnings. His technical incompetence was becoming undeniably obvious to experts who understood exactly what they were witnessing. "Let me show you the advanced analytical capabilities," Trevor continued, desperately trying to recover his credibility by attempting more complex operations. This was the crucial moment. Trevor's ego and panic were leading him toward exactly the devastating mistake I had anticipated. He was about to attempt a database administrative command that he fundamentally misunderstood. "Trevor," I warned one more time, "those administrative functions can be dangerous in production environments. Hand over your work." Trevor barked at me with obvious frustration and embarrassment. "I designed this system, and I know exactly how it operates." The room fell silent at Trevor's aggressive outburst. Richard looked shocked at his son's unprofessional behavior, while the investors witnessed someone claiming technical expertise while clearly lacking basic competence. Trevor turned back to the laptop and attempted to execute what he thought was an impressive analytical query. Instead, his command contained fundamental syntax errors that triggered the exact failure mode I had programmed into the system. The screen immediately went black. Error messages cascaded across the display in bright red text. The database console showed catastrophic failure warnings as the demonstration system appeared to crash completely. $20 million in potential investment began evaporating as investors watched the supposed technical visionary stare helplessly at the broken system he claimed to have architected. The conference room erupted in controlled chaos as investors watched our supposedly revolutionary platform display nothing but error messages and system failure warnings. Trevor stood frozen beside the laptop, his face pale and his hands trembling as he stared at the catastrophic results of his attempted demonstration. David Chen broke the tense silence with a direct question that cut through Trevor's pretense like a scalpel. "Can you explain what just happened to your system?" Trevor's mouth opened and closed without producing coherent words. His supreme confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by obvious panic as he realized that his technical fraud was being exposed to industry experts. "There seems to be some kind of unexpected system error," Trevor finally managed, his voice shaking. "This kind of technical malfunction doesn't normally occur during standard operations." Dr. Liu leaned forward with the kind of focused intensity that comes from decades of debugging complex systems. "The error messages suggest fundamental syntax problems in the database commands you executed. Can you walk us through your query logic?" Trevor's face flushed red as he struggled to provide any coherent explanation. The query optimization protocols should have prevented any logical conflicts through strategic error handling frameworks. More meaningless buzzwords that confirmed to everyone in the room that Trevor possessed no genuine understanding of database architecture or system administration. Richard Whitman looked mortified as he watched his son's credibility disintegrate in front of potential investors. The $20 million investment opportunity was slipping away with every moment that Trevor failed to demonstrate actual technical competence. This was my moment of choice. I could either allow Trevor's incompetence to destroy the company's funding prospects, or step forward to salvage the situation. The decision would determine not only my professional future but the fate of 14 other employees whose jobs depended on securing this investment. James Patterson turned toward me with desperate hope in his eyes. "Cherie, is there any way to recover from this system failure?" The room fell completely silent as every person present focused on my response. Investors, executives, and employees all waited to see whether I could rescue the demonstration that Trevor had destroyed through his technical ignorance. I approached the laptop with calm professionalism, knowing that this moment would determine everything. I designed multiple backup systems specifically for scenarios like this, I announced to the assembled group. With a few keystrokes, I activated the recovery protocols that I had prepared weeks earlier. The system immediately restored to full functionality, displaying the dashboard interfaces and analytical capabilities that Trevor had been attempting to demonstrate. Our platform includes comprehensive fail-safe mechanisms that protect against user errors and system malfunctions. I explained to the investors while navigating through features that showcased genuine technical innovation. David Chen's expression transformed from concern to genuine interest as he watched me effortlessly operate systems that Trevor claimed to have designed. This recovery capability is impressive. Can you explain the technical architecture behind these fail-safe protocols? For the next 20 minutes, I provided detailed explanations of database clustering algorithms, security implementations, and performance optimization strategies. Unlike Trevor's meaningless buzzwords, my technical discussion demonstrated deep understanding of every component and design decision. Dr. Liu interrupted with sophisticated questions about distributed consensus algorithms and transaction isolation levels. I answered each query with specific examples and technical details that proved genuine expertise. Your clustering approach is remarkably similar to techniques I published in academic journals 3 years ago, Dr. Thompson observed. Have you been following recent research in distributed database architecture? Yes, I replied confidently. I've implemented several optimizations based on your consistency protocol research, combined with novel approaches to load balancing that I developed independently. The investors began taking extensive notes as I demonstrated platform capabilities that exceeded their expectations. Real-time analytics, fraud detection algorithms, and scalable transaction processing, all performed flawlessly under my expert guidance. Meanwhile, Trevor stood silently beside the wall, his earlier confidence completely shattered as he watched me effortlessly explain technical innovations that he had claimed as his own strategic vision. I'm curious about the intellectual property ownership of these innovations, David Chen said with pointed directness. Can you clarify who developed the core technical architecture we're seeing? This was the moment I had been preparing for during months of careful documentation. I produced time-stamped patent applications, code repositories with commit histories, and email communications that proved my authorship of every technical innovation. These database optimizations, security protocols, and performance enhancements represent my independent research and development over the past 8 months. I stated clearly, all patents and intellectual property rights are filed under my name with comprehensive documentation of the development timeline. Richard Whitman's face went white as he began understanding the implications of what was being revealed. His son had been systematically stealing credit for technical work that belonged entirely to someone else. The investors examined my documentation with growing appreciation for the sophisticated technical innovations they were witnessing. Dr. Liu smiled as she reviewed patent applications that demonstrated genuine expertise and original research. This technical architecture represents exactly the kind of innovation that interests our investment fund, David Chen announced. The combination of performance optimization, security implementation, and scalable design shows real competitive advantage in the payment processing market. Dr. Thompson nodded in agreement. These clustering algorithms and consistency protocols are genuinely novel approaches that could revolutionize transaction processing speeds. Sarah Williams, who had been quietly observing the entire demonstration, finally spoke directly to me. Would you be willing to discuss your long-term role in scaling these technical innovations as the company grows? The question hung in the air, as everyone realized that the investors were interested in funding Dataflow specifically because of my technical capabilities, not Trevor's fraudulent claims of strategic leadership. Trevor's humiliation was complete as investors, executives, and employees all understood that his supposed technical expertise was entirely fictional. The intellectual property theft and systematic fraud were exposed beyond any possibility of denial. Richard approached me after the investors finished reviewing my documentation. Cherie, I owe you a profound apology. I had no idea that Trevor was misrepresenting the source of our technical innovations. The truth had finally emerged, but the consequences for Trevor, Richard, and the entire company were only beginning to unfold. The transformation that followed the investor demonstration exceeded every expectation I had harbored for justice and professional vindication. Within 24 hours of exposing Trevor's fraud, Dataflow Solutions underwent a complete restructuring that validated everything I had endured during months of systematic abuse. Pinnacle Ventures confirmed their $20 million investment with one crucial condition. I would assume the role of Chief Technology Officer with complete authority over all technical strategy and platform development. David Chen personally called to express the investment committee's enthusiasm for my technical innovations and leadership potential. Your database architecture represents exactly the kind of breakthrough technology that creates industry disruption, David explained during our follow-up conversation. Our investment decision is based primarily on your technical capabilities and intellectual property portfolio. The new equity package reflected my actual contribution to the company's value, instead of the diminished ownership that Trevor's manipulation had created. I received senior executive-level equity that would provide genuine financial security if Dataflow achieved its growth projections. Richard Whitman's public apology came during an emergency company meeting where he addressed every employee about the intellectual property fraud that had been exposed. His acknowledgement was complete and unambiguous. I failed in my duty to protect the intellectual contributions of our most valuable team member, Richard announced to the assembled staff. Cherry's technical innovations are the foundation of our competitive advantage, and I deeply regret allowing anyone to take credit for her brilliant work. Trevor's termination was swift and comprehensive. The board of directors voted unanimously to remove him from all company positions and initiate legal proceedings for intellectual property theft and corporate misconduct. His future employment prospects in the technology industry were effectively eliminated by the public exposure of his fraudulent behavior. The legal investigation revealed that Trevor's theft extended far beyond my work to include systematic exploitation of other employees' contributions. Patent attorneys found evidence of intellectual property fraud that could have exposed Dataflow to millions of dollars in potential litigation if investors had discovered it later. James Patterson gracefully transitioned to an advisory role, acknowledging that the Chief Technology Officer position required someone with my level of technical innovation and industry recognition. You've earned this leadership opportunity through genuine merit and exceptional technical excellence, he told me privately. The engineering team's response was overwhelmingly positive as they finally understood the true source of the innovations that had made their work possible. Colleagues who had been manipulated into crediting Trevor with my accomplishments expressed genuine remorse for their misperception. I'm embarrassed that I believed Trevor's claims about developing our clustering architecture, Sarah admitted during a team lunch. Your technical explanations always demonstrated deeper understanding, but I got confused by his strategic frameworks language. The industry recognition that followed was both validating and professionally transformative. Technology publications interviewed me about the database innovations that had impressed Pinnacle Ventures. Conference organizers invited me to speak about high-performance distributed architecture at major industry events. University of Washington featured me as a distinguished alumna whose technical achievements exemplified the school's computer science program excellence. The recognition from my alma mater was particularly meaningful because it validated the academic foundation that had made my innovations possible. My relationship with my family was strengthened by finally being able to share genuine professional success. Instead of complaining about workplace injustice, I could describe exciting technical challenges and leadership opportunities that utilized my full capabilities. The most profound change was personal rather than professional. Months of systematic psychological manipulation had damaged my confidence and self-perception, but exposing Trevor's fraud restored my understanding of my own worth and capabilities. I realized that technical excellence, combined with strategic thinking, created unstoppable professional momentum. The database innovations that Trevor had stolen were genuinely revolutionary, and my ability to develop such breakthrough technology represented rare and valuable talent. The life lesson that emerged from this experience was both simple and profound. Patient documentation and calculated response prove more powerful than emotional reaction or immediate confrontation. My systematic approach to gathering evidence and strategically exposing fraud created lasting justice rather than temporary satisfaction. Standing up for intellectual property rights protected not only my own interests, but also established precedents that would benefit other employees facing similar exploitation. The legal and professional consequences that Trevor faced sent clear messages about the risks of stealing credit for others' innovations. 6 months later, Dataflow Solutions had become a model for ethical workplace practices in the technology industry. Our employee handbook included comprehensive protections for intellectual property attribution, and our hiring practices emphasized merit-based evaluation rather than nepotistic advancement. Trevor's attempts to find new employment were consistently unsuccessful, as industry background checks revealed his history of intellectual property theft. His application to a competing payment processing company included references to database experience at Dataflow Solutions. When their hiring manager called me for a reference check, I provided a factual summary of Trevor's actual role and contributions. Professional integrity required honest disclosure about his systematic fraud and technical incompetence. The most satisfying aspect of my vindication was not Trevor's downfall, but rather the opportunity to build a company culture based on genuine merit and collaborative innovation. The technical team that I now led was developing breakthrough solutions that could revolutionize how small businesses process financial transactions. Looking back on the entire experience, I understood that calculated revenge had never been about destruction or personal vendetta. The goal was always justice, truth, and creating a workplace environment where technical excellence could flourish without exploitation. My story demonstrates that standing up for intellectual property rights requires courage, patience, and strategic thinking, but the results can transform not only individual careers but entire organizational cultures. When technical merit triumphs over political manipulation, everyone benefits from increased innovation and authentic collaboration. The database platform that Trevor tried to steal has now been recognized as breakthrough technology that earned Dataflow Solutions its position as an industry leader. The innovations that began in my independent research continue to evolve and improve under my technical leadership. To anyone who might be facing similar intellectual property theft or workplace manipulation, I want to share this message. Document everything, maintain your technical excellence, and trust that merit ultimately prevails over political fraud. The truth has power that cannot be permanently suppressed. Have you ever experienced someone taking credit for your hard work or innovative ideas? How did you handle the situation? And what lessons did you learn about standing up for yourself in professional environments? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about workplace justice, and share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of protecting intellectual contributions. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that your talents and innovations deserve proper recognition and protection.